Great. So, hi everyone. My name is Jelter Meers. I lead the data and research team at the Pulitzer Center. Um, Today, this is, I think, yes, the third webinar of our series investigating the ocean. Today, we're going to look at following the money. Specifically, we're going to look at company ownership, at investors. We're going to look a little bit into company documents as well, company accounts, which is not as scary as it sounds. And yeah, this will be recorded. We will share the slides. So if you didn't catch anything, feel free to ask a question in the chat, but also remember you'll get the slides and there will be a recording available later, which will be put on our YouTube channel. So I wanted to start with looking into one of the stories of one of our fellows. So a fellow is a journalist that we support for a year long through a fellowship where they work on a specific project. This fellow, Elizabeth, she was looking at deep sea mining, and this specific story was a bit about how a deep sea mining company positions itself and how they switched their sales pitch to attract investors. She was looking at lobbying disclosures, which is a really great way to look at a company and what they want to do and where they're putting their money and who they're trying to influence. And this is a screenshot of where you can look at these lobbying disclosures. But of course, also, this one is about the metals company, TMC, which is a publicly traded company. It's also interesting to see who was investing in the company before this pivot and afterwards, and if this kind of investment maybe influenced that, right? So because this is a public company, you can just look up the ownership and the people investing in it online, which is and it's publicly available, very easy. So today, as I said, we're going to look into company ownership. There will be an exercise for that as well. We will talk about navigating corporate registries. So I'll explain that a little bit better later. Also talk quickly about offshores and secrecy jurisdictions, about investors and looking at the owners of public companies, like I just showed in the example, and then also go over company accounts, what you can get out of them. So it's a lot. So yeah, sorry if this might be an overload of information. So we're going to start with company ownership. I have created this little scheme that I think makes it a bit more fun to follow when you're looking at companies and you want to see who owns them. The first thing you want to figure out when you're looking at a company is where is it registered? If you don't know that yet, you can type in the company name on a search engine. You can also go on opencorporates.org, really good website. It'll already give you some preliminary information. Depending on the jurisdiction, the country where it's registered, it'll also already tell you who owns it. So it's really a first-stop shop for looking up companies. I recommend that you make a login because some of the functionality is available if you log in. It just works a little bit better. I see that the light is going down a little bit outside my window, so I'm going to open my window a bit more so you can see me better. Okay, I'm back. It was just starting to look like I live in a cave or something. Another tip to figure out where a company is registered is to look at the denomination. So often when you have a company name at the end, it'll say LTD, which refers to limited. It'll say NA or SA or NV. And these obviously refer to languages. Limited is English, so most likely the company will be registered
in a place where they speak English primarily. Similarly with NA and SA, NA is and SA are more common in Latin spoken languages, so like French, Spanish, and V's for the Netherlands and Belgium. Also, when you're looking up a company, if it's from abroad, obviously, try look it up in the original language, and also scripts can matter a lot. If it's a Russian, Ukrainian company, Serbian company, try to look it up in the Cyrillic script. If it's Chinese, in Chinese, but do know that between scripts, especially with Chinese, there won't be a literal translation. So often the name in the Chinese script is very different from the name in the English script. If you have access to these, obviously, they're very useful. Page resources, sources like LexisNexis, CR, and Orbis. Out of these three, I think a Sayari subscription is probably the cheapest. If your newsroom can invest in that, it's really, really useful. Then if none of these work, if you can't find this company anywhere online, we're going to have to get creative, but I have a special slide for that a little bit later on. Okay, so once you figure out where the company is registered, basically there's three types of companies. There's more, but I'm going to keep it simple. There's companies that are owned by the state, right? Often like public transport companies are owned by the state, or other types of companies can be owned by the state, like development, stuff like that. So then you know that at least a part of this company is owned by the state. Often, state-owned companies also have other owners. They might be private, or it might be publicly traded. If a company is publicly traded, you can find almost all of its information, depending on where it's registered, on the stock exchange, where it's being traded, or the company website, if it's big enough. If a company is big enough, it'll put up all its annual reports and ownership information on its website. Today, we're mostly going to focus on private companies because these are a bit trickier. So here's another little scheme I made. If you're looking at a private company, and obviously you know where it's registered, first stop is, again, open corporates, or if you have access to them, global databases like CRE, Orbis, LexisNexis. They might list the owners already. If they list the owners and it's a private person, then you know, obviously, who owns it as a person. But when it's a private person, you need to ask yourself if this person is a proxy. So often when we're doing environmental investigations, especially with smaller companies that don't have a lot of accountability, or it won't get audited as quickly, they might have a proxy instead of the actual owner listed as the owner. If you suspect that's the case, for example, if you look up this person and this is a person who has absolutely no history or experience in the sector the company is active in, or if they have absolutely no online profile that would match this kind of position, it could be a proxy. Or if you know if you know the person, for example, and you know for sure they don't own this company. A way to get around that is to look at the personal and company networks of this proxy. See if there's any links to the people that you suspect actually own the company. Often people will use a family member or a friend or a other type of business associate as a stand-in for their ownership. Also, often the real owners will still, they will still want to have a say in this company on record. So they're often listed in the directors or as a secretary or as a manager or maybe on the board. And another really good tip, this will come back later, is to look up the company address. So often if the owner of company A is a proxy, and it's person B is the real owner. Person B might be owning company C, which is at the same address as company A. Okay, so basically, I might have just made it more complicated by using that. But basically, look at the address. If there's any other companies there on the same address. Oops, sorry. Um, but what if we do not have access to Sayari or the owners are not listed on open corporates? Then the first step is to go to a national registry. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth into this later. Every country where a company can exist has a registry, so it has a place where this company's existence is registered. A lot of these today are online, and a lot of these are open to the public. Okay. I would say not, I would say less probably than 50% will tell you who's the owner, but it'll give you other information like management, for example, or incorporation date. So if you go to this national registry and you find that it has ownership information and this is a private person, great. If there's no national registry information online, obviously you could go to the office offline. If it's open to the public, sometimes you need to bring a lawyer. But if there's no national registry online, an alternative is to look for a national gazette. So lots and lots of countries have a gazette, which is like a publication that informs the public about companies and other corporate things. It'll often have a notice in the gazette when a company is incorporated, when there's a change of ownership. For example, Turkey has really good national gazette, which in some cases gives you better information than its online national registry. These national gazettes, they are not published every time a company comes into existence or changes ownership. Obviously, that'll be crazy, but they are published periodically. So it could be like every 2 weeks, every month, something like that. If the website with these national gazettes and the text in it is digitized and searchable, obviously you can just look for the company name you're interested in. But sometimes these gazettes will be online as PDFs and they're not searchable. In that case, you're going to have to find out first when the company was incorporated. And here again, open corporates is really useful because they will often have an incorporation date, even if they don't have ownership. So for example, if I find company A is registered in Turkey, I can't search the National Gazette, but I see it on Open Corporates. It was registered in 2021 in February. Then I'm going to get the copy of the National Gazette of February 2021 and then see what information it tells me about this company and its registration. Sayari, which I've mentioned before, is a corporate database, has a lot of gazettes as well besides national registry information. If there's no national registry, there's no national gazette, there might be a local registry or a local gazette. So like in some countries like the US and Canada, Germany, you have registries per province or state. And then basically the same workflow applies. You just look up the company in that.
If there's none of those, then we're gonna have to get creative again, which will be the next slide. Now, there's one part of this slide I did not talk about yet. That is when instead you find out who's the owner, but it's not a person, it's another company. So this is often the case. Often companies are owned by other companies, known as shareholding companies. If that's the case, you're going to have to just start again with this new company. You're going to have to go all the way down until you find out who's the actual person behind it. Sometimes companies are owned by companies in other places, right? In other countries. And that might make it more difficult to find out who's the owner. Some examples of that are when it's the company that owns the company is registered in an offshore, or if it's a foundation or a nonprofit. And we're going to address that in a future slide. So I had this in the first slide and the second slide, getting creative here at the end of at the bottom of the slide, and here at the bottom of the slide left. Basically, if you tried all the steps and you can't get any results. Really good other sources for company ownership besides these kind of typical corporate data registries or platforms are court documents. Whenever a company is mentioned in a court document, it'll usually mention the owner. These can be from small courts. So, for example, if a company owns a ship and they didn't pay the taxes on that, or they didn't pay the port fees on that, it might be mentioned in a court document related to the port or stuff like that, like a marine port, something like that. I've, for example, had luck figuring out who owned a ship involved in drug trafficking, because this ship, I mean, we knew who owned it, but we couldn't find a document that said it. But we found that this ship hadn't paid its docking fees, and it was mentioned in a court case. And so in these court filings, it's told us who the real owner was. Secondly, looking up the address, I mentioned this before. Often an address will be shared by multiple companies, and you might be able to find out who's the owner of the other companies and establish circumstantial evidence this way. Thirdly, find out who registered the website of the company. Companies often have websites. Sometimes the person or the entity that registered the website is the person that is behind the company as well. You can use who.is for this, but there's other tools online. Most of them are paid to find out who registered a website. Then sometimes you got to go down before you can go up, right? If you look at the subsidiaries, we're looking at company A. Company A owns company B, but we want to know who owns company A. Okay, so company A company A is a multinational, and it is owned by company C, which is based in Panama, and we cannot find out who are the people behind company C. But company A also owns company B, which is in Ireland. And in Ireland, you're required to file ultimate beneficial ownership. So by looking at company B and looking at the register in Ireland, we are in the end able to figure out who owns company C. So yeah, sometimes you got to look at subsidiaries to find out who owns, in the end, the mother company or the ultimate beneficial owner. Then sometimes ownership information is shared in business to business. I don't want to call magazines or like articles, and in business wires. You can find a lot of these on LexisNexis, but a lot of them are also just available online through a search engine. Another tip is if you're looking at a company in a country you're not familiar with at all, as someone who lives there or lives close to this country, they might be more familiar with different ways of obtaining the information. Oh, I have this in here twice. Um, Also, what I like to do is when I come across a new jurisdiction and it's a tax haven or a secrecy jurisdiction, I like to learn about how everything works there. So I go to the people, to the website of the people that help companies register in these places. So I want to see their sales pitch. I want to see if someone says, yeah, come register here because you won't have to pay any taxes. This is how we do it. By reading those kinds of sites and that kind of information, you learn how it works as well. And then a lot of companies, they will go to a conference. They will have a presentation, just like this one. And they will, and those files might be somewhere on the internet. They might have a PDF that they share among shareholders, a PDF for investors or a specific project. All of those might give you information about the ownership of the company. And then last, companies might be mentioned in certain leaks databases. So I don't know, WikiLeaks, ICIJs, Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers. Any of those might mention the company you're interested in. But sometimes none of this works, and we just have to go back to old school boots on the ground offline reporting. Sometimes you have to go to an in-person company registry, like you have to go in person to talk to it because they don't have an online website, or they have a website, but it just tells you to go to the office. Same for court filings. Most countries do not have their court filings online, so you have to go in person or ask someone to go for you. And then sometimes like this won't be open to the public or journalists. So then the only option is to talk to people that know the company. And obviously, you'll need to have different sources confirming the same information. Um, and then now, this was not something I would put in my slides 2 years ago, but this is something I am seeing. Can't I just ask an LLM? Can't I just ask ChatGPT or Claude who owns this company? Now, you could, obviously, but remember, LLMs are predictive. When it comes to nitty-gritty information, they often still make mistakes and they make up information. They deduce from a general trend. And this might not be applicable for what you're looking at. A lot of this information, a lot of these like corporate registries, like you need to have a login and stuff. It's information they don't scrape or can't. Secondly, there's a lot of benefits to doing this research by yourself. Like you'll get a lot of, if you just ask an AI, you'll miss a lot of nuance. You won't see the timeline, for example, of the ownership changes. Maybe you see the last name is the same as the one of someone else who's on the board or the management of a company. And also you won't really learn about what you see along the way. Like maybe when you're looking up this company name in a register, you'll see there's other companies with very similar names and they might be related. They might have the same address. There might be companies that are in the same business, and you want to have this as context for your story, right? Come across a document about a new investment, a new partner, lots of contextual information that could be important for your story. And then also, you're not going to learn new skills. And these kinds of skills we learn looking at follow the money, looking at corporate info is transferable to other types of research as well. Importantly, you won't exercise your brain. And for me, it's also a question of why did we become journalists, right? We're curious, we want to explore things, we want to find out new things. If you just get the answer directly, and it might be wrong, you're not, you're not learning as much. And then another thing to consider, of course, I mean, I'm sure you're all aware of this, This is an ocean webinar. We are interested in nature and the effect of humans on nature. The impact of AI on the environment hasn't been fully established yet, but it's probably not great. And also, what about the social impact? We are interested in holding to account companies and governments for doing the right thing, for justice. And what we're seeing so far is that AI companies don't really seem to care much about that. So I have a little Buddhist mantra here. The path is the goal. This is the title of a book about Buddhist meditation. The search is just as important as figuring out who owns a company. So my advice is you can use LLMs to help analyze big troves of documents. Always double check what they tell you. To find a specific website, maybe treat an LLM as your assistant, but keep developing your own skills and knowledge and have fun along the way. So that was my little spiel. Now let's go back to private companies. When you're looking at private companies, it can also be interesting to figure out what type of ownership they have. Like different companies have different types of ownership. You have limited companies, for example. There the owners have limited liability. That's what it refers to, limited liability. What that means is that the people that own it, so that own a share of it, that put their money in it, are only responsible for what they put in it. If there's any losses beyond that, they're not responsible for that, except in the cases of fraud or wrongdoing. Partnerships, similar, except that they are liable for the losses. This is a kind of companies often used by law firms, accountants, sorry. Limited liability, it's kind of a mix of the two, often used by hedge funds, private equity firms, and accountancy practices as well. And then there's another type called a limited partnership. I know there's some people from the Netherlands here. A lot of multinationals have CVs, which is the Dutch version of a limited partnership in the Netherlands, because it allows them to avoid a certain type of taxation on profits. So now we have a 5-minute exercise. So I'm going to be quiet for 5 minutes. The exercise is the following. A source tells you that a company called Gold Air AS is being used to smuggle illegal goods. What will you do first? How will you try to find information about this company? And what type of company is it? And what activity does it do? There's an extra question if you can get it. Can you find out who the shareholders are? I know we just went over a lot, so I'm giving you a little cheat sheet to remind you of the different steps that you can take to figure this out. So I'm going to go, we'll meet you, I'll come back in 5 minutes at 35 past the hour. And yeah, have fun with the exercise. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I will already respond by typing while we're doing the exercise. Okay, everybody, 5 minutes are over. So you can type your answers in the chat. I see we have an open corporates link. Very good. Someone else also said like first thing to do is to go to open corporates. Nice. Yeah, passenger air transport, indeed, private limited liability company. Um, Very good. Someone found it in the Norwegian um, corporate registry. Very, very good. So you're all doing it completely right, which is really nice to see. Um, so yeah, the first thing to do, obviously, as I said in the beginning, is find out where it's registered and what type of company it is, using a search engine or open corporates. Secondly, how will you try to find out more information about this company? Um, Once you know where it's registered, which is Norway, we will look it up in the Norway registry. Um, very good. I see really good answers coming in. I can't keep my eyes off of it. And then what type of company is it? We know it's passenger air transport and it's a private limited company. So this kind of lines up with what the source tells you, right? It smuggles illegal goods. You know, if it's a passenger air transport, it means a small plane that can go in and out of places very quickly. So here's the way I did it. I looked up gold areas in quotation marks to make sure I get right correct results. Um, Here it says, the first result already says it's in Grimstad, which is in Norway. The second one says it's in Norway. Looking it up in an open corporates confirms this. And gives you a little bit more information already. Already tells you it's passenger air transport. Also tells you the full address. Then the next step, as so many of you did also, is I looked up where's the Norway corporate register. I had never looked up a company in Norway before. So I looked that up on DuckDuckGo, good alternative to Google if you don't want to support big tech. Looked it up here. This is their website. But then we have a hurdle, right? Because you get so many results and it's none of them are an exact match for the company name. So this is like a really good lesson. Besides the company name, it'll also have a number, and a number is a much better identifier to find something in a register or in a database, because lots of other companies can have a similar name or the exact same name, for example. So on the Norway registry, you can also look by organization number. Okay, so I did that, and then I found the right one. And then you can see on the Norway registry, there's you can look at the announcements for this organization. So that's whenever there's a change in the company that they need to tell the register, that they need to tell the government. And then there's also annual accounts. Annual accounts, which we'll look at later in more detail. Talk about the basic financials of a company and also often about ownership and management. So here are some of the documents you can get there. It tells you how many kroner are in the company, what's the capital. And here, when we look into this document, I opened the original incorporation document. It tells you the two shareholders, actionnaire or whatever it's called in Norwegian. It's Helge and Mogens, right? They both own 50% of the company in ordinary shares. And then we also see that Mogens is chairman of the board and Helge is a board member, also is in there. So the key takeaways from this exercise, try different identifiers.
So try corporation numbers, look at addresses, double check the names because in the past when I did this exercise, some people came up with a different company thinking it was the same, but the name wasn't exactly the same. So when you're using a search engine, use quotation marks to make sure it's the exact spelling and the exact name. And then also take a look at the company documents. I don't speak Norwegian, but from the structure of the documents, I was able to see like what is most likely going to mean shareholder or owner. There's universal word for this like that, like capital, ordinary, which is often a type of share, actions. And here in Norway, for example, it was action error. So action, it's very similar to the English word. So maybe some of you can share in the chat what are the words for shareholder and capital in your native tongue or where you're based. So now before I go into company registries, I just wanted to make sure there's no questions. I haven't seen any come up in the chat, Ella, right?
No, I haven't seen any questions either.
Okay. We have one from Priyanka now, just came in. How did you get to the Norway registry? Okay, good question, Priyanka. Let me just go back a little bit. So first looked at the company, found that I just looked up Norway corporate register in DuckDuckGo. You can use Google as well. And then the first link was the Norway register. Then we have another question. I see. Is there a connection between the Norwegian company and the Greek company of the same name? No, but this has come up in other ones as well. There's a Greek company. Is that, if I remember correctly, it doesn't have AS at the end, right? So it could be, but when I looked into it, I didn't see any reason to suspect that they are similar. And a name like Gold Air, this can easily be something that different people come up with at the same time. But very good question, really good findings. Very good job, everyone. So now I'm going to go into company registries. So we looked at the Norway registry before. Just so you know, they vary a lot. With some, you can have a name search, but it'll only tell you if it exists or not. Some have all the information for free. Some you need to pay to download. Some only have very basic information. For some, you need a subscription to even do a search. So it changes a lot from place to place. Here's like 3 examples of 3 search bars. One is the UK one. The second one is from the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And the third one is for Cyprus. All work a little bit differently. Familiarize yourself with these. And yeah, try out different ways of searching, like name, number, exact spelling, quotation marks, no quotation marks, things like that. Only a few of the online registries allow you to search for a person. So mostly you need to know a company name or a number. If you're looking for a person, a specific person, you want to see all the companies that are involved in this country or state. There's not a lot of registries that allow you to search by the person. It's usually the companies that are indexed. So this is the UK register. A lot of companies register in the UK because it gives a sense of credibility, and it's a big financial market. So a lot of companies register there. There's an example. I love pineapple, so I looked at pineapple. This is a company called Pineapple Aesthetics, which I have no idea what that would mean. But you can see they have like overview, filing history, people, more. The filing history is, again, original documents, like what we saw in the Norway registry. And under people, you can see officers, which is the same as management.
and persons with significant control, which is a very British way of saying who owns it. Okay. So very good corporate register, gives you a lot of information. Here's a list of some countries that have free national registries. Here's a list with paid national registries. A lot of links. I cannot guarantee that they all still work, okay? Because these often get updated, and we'd need like a team of 10 people to check these out all the time. North America is a bit different. I referred to this before. Canada has a register per province, but you have national searches to find out in which province a company is based. And in the US, it's a registry per state. Note that a lot of companies active in the US will be registered in Delaware, even if they have an address in another state like California, for example. There's a lot of variety in the US per state as to what information you can get. New York, for example, won't give you almost any information. If a company is registered in New York State, you will not be able to find out a lot. Florida, on the other hand, is really good, has a lot of documents and a lot of info there for free. Some countries don't have an online company register, as I said before, but you can go in person. But sometimes there are organizations that collect company information and put it together for a whole region. And here's a link to a few regional registries. So now I have another short exercise. I think I'm only going to do 2 minutes because we don't have that much time today, and I still have quite a lot to go through. But I'll give you some hints. This one is quite straightforward. So I want you guys to go to the UK Companies Register. Look up this company called Glomar Minerals Ltd. I'm going to type it so you can just copy it. Glomar Minerals Ltd. It's in the chat. Look it up in the UK Companies Register. Try to find a link to another deep sea mining company through the people listed on the register. This is a bit more advanced. If you can just find it, maybe tell us like who owns it in the chat or something. Show us that you found it. That's more than good enough. If you have time remaining, we can try to find this link to another deep sea mining company. In any case, I'll show you how to do it. So let's take another 2 minutes. So at 51 past the hour, we'll come back and see what we got. So if you don't hear me talking now, that's the point. This is for you guys to take some time and look at the UK Companies Register. I'll put the link in the chat as well. Wow, you guys are killing it. Such a good job. Look at that. All the answers in the chat. Very cool. Great findings. You guys even got in 2 minutes to like the more advanced part of it. Very, very good. So I'm gonna show you how I answer these questions. So the original shareholders we found were these four, again, three are Norwegian companies, and one is Minerals Harvesting Glomar LP Limited Partnership, and then the link I found is this officer, Mr. Williams, is also an officer of UK Seabed Resources Limited and Albexco Limited. So let's go over this together. So this is the UK register. Put in the names, don't need quotation marks, pretty good search engine. Here we already see Glomar Minerals, and also underneath it is listed Albexco Limited, which used to be called Glomar Minerals Limited. So I'm going to come back to that before. This is the homepage of Glomar. As you can see, you have the overview, filing history, people, which I already showed you before. If you go to the filing history, I then opened the very first document, the oldest document they have on there, the incorporation document. Often, what you'll see is the people that are originally involved in the setting up the company, they might change over time. This might be legitimate, but often, or not often, sometimes this also is just people trying to hide their involvement in a company. So I always go to the incorporation document, and that's why the question was, who were the original shareholders, right, of this company? And if you open that one, you can see these the initial shareholdings, which are the people that put up the money to create this company in the first place. And you can see the ones that I listed in the beginning. Then for the second question, how is it linked to another sea mining company? This happens if you can see this if you look at the officers. There's Mr. Williams, as a lot of you found out as you showed in the chat. If you click on his name in UK Companies House, which is really cool, you can just click on a name and then you'll see what else they're involved in. But I have a caveat about that. I'll tell you later. You can see that they are also involved are involved in the UK Seabed Resources Limited, which also really sounds like a deep sea mining or a seabed mining company. And then we can find a confirmation of this. So this actually ties into this story done by Greenpeace. I know there's a Greenpeace reporter here telling us how basically one company that was holding a deep sea mining exploration license basically changed ownership and now this license will still be useful for another company, basically. So going back to the initial search results, remember there was this other one called Albexco Limited, which had a previous name, which is the same as Glomar. So if you click on that, you can see that it used to be called Albatross Exploitation Company Limited, and that their nature of business is other research and experimental development on natural sciences and engineering. Albatross is a bird of the ocean, right? So this to me also indicates like this company could be involved in deep sea mining.
And then when you look at the people involved in it, the officers, it's Mr. Williams again. It's the same Williams. If you want to find out more about this company someone is involved in, as I said, you can look it up on Companies House, but the results are a little bit, can be a little bit messy. So it might be good to look them up in different databases like Open Corporates. Here you can immediately see the names of the companies. So we have UK Seabed Resources, we have Seabed Resources Development, we have Albexco, and we have Glomar. So lots of companies that seem to be in the same kind of industry. So takeaways from this exercise, go beyond the indexed information, look at the original documents. Sometimes what's in the original documents is no longer on the indexed information, so no longer on the web page. It's only in the PDF because it's been updated with other information, for example. As I said before, often an owner who wants to later hide his or her involvement in a company will be mentioned in the original incorporation documents. Always look at all the people involved in the companies and see what other companies they're involved in, what other businesses they're involved in. Look at previous names of companies, might give you links to more people and other companies in the whole network. And then look up the same people and companies in other databases. They might have different information, or the information might be clearer. If you guys have any questions about that, please feel free to put it in the chat. I have some water, but I don't see any. Right, Ella? We don't have any more questions, right? Okay. Well, if you think of something, you can just put it in the chat later. How can one find the original incorporated document? Okay, Mukun, let's go back to the registry. So I looked up Glomar Minerals in the UK registry, and then you get this page, right? Under the name, you have the company number, then you have these green little boxes. Under the green boxes, you have overview, filing history, people, charges, more. The original documents are under filing history. So if you click on filing history, you'll see this. And at the bottom of the list, the oldest document from April 2025, it says incorporation. This is the original incorporation document. So that's where you can find it in the UK registry. And a lot of other registries that are online and open to the public, they work the same way. So remember in the beginning, okay. Yes, okay. Can we save these two questions for the end, Ella? Great. Then remember at the beginning, I was talking about when you look at the ownership, sometimes you'll find a person, sometimes you'll find a company, sometimes you'll find a company that's based in an offshore or a secrecy jurisdiction. And this is often because the people in the company, they are trying to pay as little taxes as possible, which is not illegal. It might be immoral for some, or in some situations, but it's completely legal in a lot of cases. Some of these companies might be based in secrecy jurisdictions. These are places that are known to be places where you cannot get any information about a company. So an offshore, the name offshore originally just referred to a company that is registered somewhere else than where its economic activity is. So, for example, if I have a bakery and I live in Germany, I have a bakery in Germany, but I register my bakery company in England, then that's an offshore. Offshore, confusingly, can also refer to the country it's based in. So, like, for example, a famous offshore where a lot of people set up companies is the Bahamas or Panama or the British Virgin Islands. So there's different ways people use offshores. Generally, it refers to the to companies registered in tax havens, so in places where they don't have to pay taxes on the income, the profit, or anything like that. I have some links to the registries of tax havens. Quite a few of these have online registries you can look through. You can look at some company information. A lot of them don't say the ownership. So to figure out the ownership, you can try your luck at some alternative sources. There's the Offshore Leaks by ICIJ, which is based on documents that have been leaked to this organization about ownership of companies in tax havens, tax jurisdictions. OCCRP has a database called ALEF, which has recently turned into ALEF Pro. Similarly, they have a lot of leaks documents. There's a website called Offshore Alert, which puts online court cases related to companies in tax havens. So if you're lucky and the company, as I said before, if a company is named in a court case, often the owners are named. If you're lucky and this company you're looking at was involved in a court case, it might be on there. And then, yeah, as I said, some of these tax havens have transparent ownership, but you need special access to the online registry. Like you need a subscription, you need an ID, maybe a national ID or something. So it can be really tricky. Secrecy jurisdictions, on the other hand, they differ from tax havens because they don't necessarily have any tax benefits. But they might have. It's just not part of their definition. But what characterizes a secrecy jurisdiction is that they have inaccessible corporate information or a lack of corporate transparency. And here's a few of them. They're not all in like exotic places. Like, as I said, New York State gives you very, very little information about companies registered there. Same if you register a nonprofit or a foundation in the Netherlands. It's quite a good way to hide corporate information. And of course, Liechtenstein, very famous in Europe as well. It's known as a secrecy jurisdiction. Then there's a special case. I said this also in the very beginning. Sometimes a company is owned by a foundation or a nonprofit. And this can also be a way to try to obscure ownership or to try to obscure where the profits are going of a company. Some states and countries, you can look up foundations and nonprofits, and they will give you quite good information. Sometimes it's in the corporate registry, sometimes it's a different registry. So I have a few examples here. I used to work in Bosnia. They have a foundations website. Germany also has one. The US has a couple. In the Netherlands, you can find foundations in the KVK, which is the business registry. In Belgium, you can also find them, if I remember correctly, on the corporate registry. This can be a little bit tricky for your reporting when you find that the company you're interested in is owned by a foundation, because a foundation often doesn't have owners per se. It'll have like members or something. So you have to be very careful in your wording when you write about these foundations. I see we have some questions, but I think they're a bit more general. They're not specifically about the previous section, so I'm going to leave them for the end. But keep them coming, please. Then we're at the second to last part, looking into investors and funders. So we talked about company ownership, which are people that they invest a bunch of money in a company and they own it, okay? But you can also invest money in a company in a different way, namely without becoming an owner. An investor can put their money in a variety of assets. It doesn't have to be the shares of a company, but it can be in a specific project, for example, or they just invest in a company, but they're not part of the decision-making process. So basically, it's kind of like, all apples are fruit, but not all fruit are apples. All owners are investors, but not all investors are owners. If you want to look into investors, this is mostly applicable for public companies, you can find most of the information online in the stock exchange where the company is listed. So I put some links here to some major stock exchanges that have a lot of companies on them. And here I sometimes do this as an exercise, but then we would really run over time. And I want to have some time to answer these questions as well. So I turn it into an example for this webinar. In this example, I want to look up where the metals company is registered and go to their stock exchange page. I want to find a specific shareholder and see what other kinds of companies this shareholder, Old West, invests in. And then the extra question here is to find an SEC filing by TMC on the exchange website. What are they doing? The SEC is the Securities Exchanges Commission of the US. The SEC, it's an independent authority that regulates the market. So any big company, they have to, whenever they do certain things, they have to tell this independent authority about that. I think almost every exchange has an authority like that. And a lot of these filings are available online, and they give you really good insights into the company and their investments and the stuff they're doing. So if you're looking into US companies, always look them up on the SEC as well. So the metals company is based, it's registered at the NASDAQ in New York City. When you look up Old West Investment Management, you see that they're mostly investing in mining and sea extractive. So this is interesting. You could, do a profile on them, see, what kind of investments they do, look at the other companies they invest in, what kind of work they do. And then what's really cool is this SEC filing shows you that TMC in January 2026 filed for a license to start deep sea mining in the Clarion-Clipperton zone. So this is the NASDAQ website. If you look up the metals company, this is the page you get. There's a button there on the left. It's quite small. It says institutional holdings. If you click on that, it'll tell you the biggest shareholders of the company. One of the biggest ones is Old West Investment Management. If you click on that, you can figure out, you can see what other companies they're involved in. So they're involved in Lockheed Martin, Trilogy Metals, Alamos Gold, Canadian National Reserve Resources, sorry. So a lot of these kinds of mining companies and extractive industry companies. At the same time, on this page, the same page where we clicked on institutional holdings for the metals company, you have the SEC filings button. There, if you click on the one from January 2026, you can see there that they filed for an exploration license with the NOAA, which is the US's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration organization or authority to do commercial mining of polymetallic nodules in the Clarion-Clipperton zone in the Pacific Ocean. Cool. So now we are at the last part, which is great because my voice is starting to give out. Looking at company accounts. Already mentioned to you, you can find these, where you can find these. We saw them for private companies in the filing history on the UK register, also on the Norwegian register. We saw them, and then also on the NASDAQ, for example, you can find them. And here I'm giving an example of a typical multinational, the Coca-Cola company, also listed on the NASDAQ. You can find their filings on the official website of the Coca-Cola company, as well as on the NASDAQ page for the company. Now, I know financial documents, something that might seem scary or just like too difficult to even get started on, too intimidating, but they're really not. That's what these companies want you to feel. That's what they want you to think, so that we're not actually going to look into it. Company accounts are also known as financial statements and annual accounts. Financial statements, I think, is more common in the UK. Basically, what's in these documents is a breakdown of the profits and losses. That just means all the money that's going in and out. The liquid and non-liquid assets. So that's stuff they own, which can go from an office building to the chairs inside the office building. Then subsidiaries, so all the companies they own, the companies below them that they own. Then also who owns them. Investments they make, so what the company puts their money into. And then investors, so who is investing in them. So lots of really good information can be found in company accounts. I put here a summary of all the sections that are relevant for you to find out any kind of investor or investment info. Also with some, they have different names in different places, but the main ones you want to look at are the balance sheets. It lists a lot of the assets, investments in other companies as well. The income statement, because this is telling you the money that's coming in. And when they explain the money that's coming in, they'll say it's coming from an investment. Okay. And then a place that's really, really rich with information are the notes. So notes to any of the financial statements above are really interesting. And I'll show you an example. This is a note to the financial statement of the Coca-Cola company. The notes, they often tell you much more detail about specific investments, specific ownership. I was looking into this company called BA Sports Nutrition. I forget why. It was about maybe some pollution or something. And this here in the middle paragraph, it says in November 2021, the company acquired the remaining 85% ownership interest in and now owns 100% of BA Sports Nutrition, which was an LLC. I couldn't find out who owns this company anywhere, but because I did a creative Google search that was going to look through PDFs, I was able to find it in this PDF, which are like notes to the financial statements of the Coca-Cola
company. Great. So this is the end of my slides. And I think now we can go to some of the questions. Let me just pull them up. So the first question is, I have a specific question. How can I find the official American Airlines address in New York City? The headquarters is in Texas. I'm gonna make sure I get this right. So first off, I would look American Airlines in open corporates, because open corporates is really good at getting US company information. And this will include branches and subsidiaries. What you see in the US often is that a company will have a headquarters. You say, like, for American Airlines, it's in Texas. It might be in Delaware for tax purposes. And then you'll see that there are branches in other states. So I would feel that it's probably going to be in open corporates. And otherwise, I would try to find any corporate documents from this registry. Then we have a question about Africa. Okay. Africa, a whole continent, it'll be hard to address a whole continent. Obviously, every country is different. Can you give a general advice in relation to Africa in the context of accessing registries and finding initial shareholders? Okay, thank you for the question. First off, look at the regional registry that I put earlier in the slides. Secondly, the company you're looking at will have information in a local registry probably. So if you can find the offices of the local registry, if you can talk to some people, see if you can get access to documents or information there. That's a way to do it. Thirdly, another method that we've used when we're looking at companies that are in places where there's no information online, what we do is we try to find international connections. So we try to find if this company is listed somewhere else in the investments of another company, for example, or if it trades with another company. And this way, you might be able to get information online about this company. Another one is to when you're talking to sources, talking on the ground, ask for information about it, and also try to see any other companies that are in the same industry, in the same region. See if you can find information about that, because they might be related to the original company as well. But yeah, it really depends from country to country what kind of information you can get for a company. Louisa Piard, she was asking what makes these registries tax havens. So we talked about tax havens, specific countries. What makes them tax havens? Generally, this is not applicable to each of them. They all have different kinds of tax rules and regulation. But generally, when you register in one of these places, you don't have to pay any taxes on profit made abroad. And this is a way that people will put the profits there, so they don't have to pay any taxes on it because the economic activity was abroad. But this really depends from country to country. But all the ones I listed, there's some sort of tax benefit to registering your company there. So you have to pay less taxes than if you would have registered it in the country where you're based, where the company's based, where the economic activity is taking place. Sometimes it's not about companies and that have an actual economic activity. Sometimes people set up a company tax haven and just put their personal wealth in there as well, because they would have to pay taxes on it
For example, when they give it to their children, or or just when they amass too much wealth. Any advice database for companies registered in China beyond OC? Not sure what you mean by OC, but we have access to a database in China, well, with information from Chinese companies, but I need to look up that name. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. Let me just take a quick look. If I can find it now. But so basically for a lot of information, but this is becoming less and less the case, you often needed a VPN to access Chinese company information. This is it. Open corporates, okay. So there is this one, Yansha. It is in Chinese, but it has really good info on Chinese corporations. It's one we use a lot. Great. Let's go to the next question. What is this like? Is it possible to search the other way around? What are the biggest mining and sea extraction companies in the country? For sure, you can do that as well. Charlie, I put the link in the oops, I put it in the host and panelists. Could you copy that link to the general chat, Ella? Thank you. Let me just open this window again. Okay. And then oh yeah, so is it possible to search the other way around? What are the biggest sea extraction companies in the country? This is another way to look at it. You can do this for sure. Just like Google search engine will probably already give you a pretty good response. You also have a database called Crunchbase, which is very good for that kind of stuff. There's different kinds of databases with more like macroscopic information about economies, industries that will give you this information, that will give you a list of, for example, of the biggest companies in that industry, in this place, stuff like that. Crunchbase is a good one for that. Is there a database like Company House for India? Actually, I do not know. With the size of India, I suspect there might be for each state a register, but I'm not sure. But that simple Google search should tell us that result probably. And then the last one, I think we got, can we find the initial shareholders if the incorporation document is not available on the UK registry? Interesting question. As far as I know, there will always be an incorporation document available on the UK registry. Like for all the companies I've looked up in there, in the past, like 10 years, and then you have under persons with significant control. Normally, this also has a listing of the historical owners. And it'll tell you from when they started being an owner of the company, and then you can see if that aligns with the incorporation date. If you think there's information missing, you can try contacting the company's house, because it should be available to the public. They can't like retract information from that one. Great, and I think that's it, right, Ella? Unless some questions have come in on the last minute.
We just got one last question from Luisa in the chat.
Sometimes in shipping, it is not clear whether flag state registries or classification societies operate as companies. Any suggestion on that? Flag state registries. I'm not sure if you mean like the office where you just associated to the ship. Oops. If you want to look up who owns a ship, I really suggest equasis.org. Ella will copy the link to the general chat. And then you can look up the companies using the methods we've gone over in the presentation. I don't know if that fully answered your question because it wasn't fully clear to me. Yeah. If you want more, if you want to specify more or have a follow-up, please type in the chat. We have a few more minutes. And then we got a new one from Susanna. Could you please recommend a management system for all these collected documents? Ooh, yeah. Something like Jelter. It seems like a lot of info and documentation will pile up and quickly become unwieldy. So I usually just keep them on my hard disk. I try to be very organized in my folder system on my computer. If I want to look up where a document is, I'll have like either geographically, I'll have like places like, Latin America, in Brazil, this state, companies in this state, companies in this industry, this state. I might keep track of them like that. We also have our own internal data platform that is based on the on the same model that is the basis for OCCRP's ALEF, which is really good because it allows it when you upload files, it immediately extracts the text entities. But yeah, you would have to set that up, which is a bit more complicated. I'm not familiar with Zero because I don't really have the need for anything besides how I do it. But yeah, we are at time. Thank you everyone for coming, listening to me. I guess I will already share the slides here. Okay. Now at the end, of course, I find how to put it in the general chat. These are the slides. You guys can download them. And we will also share them later with a follow-up email, I think, to all the participants. We're also putting this recording on our YouTube channel, and we'll send you the link
Thank you for your participation. And yeah, hope to see you another time.